Hmm. I think I'm ready. Kaijuologist. Digivolve 2. Digimon. Ologist. Kaijumon. Digiologist. Anime cliche. Mon. Ugh, fuck it. Hello, kaiju friends and family. It is your friendly neighborhood Kaijuologist. Little different episode for you today, though, folks. So I apologize to those who are used to me talking about the big G over here, or one of the other big G's, or maybe the big M. Um, Tonight, as promised, I want to tackle an anime very near and dear to my heart. And you probably know what we're talking about now. Digimon Adventure Try. And we will be tackling a two-parter. Tonight is part one. We will get into the first new movie, Reunion. Very nice. Yes. To those of you who are looking up Digimon Try on YouTube and have never seen my channel, a few words of warning. My channel is pretty much nothing but spoilers. I am not here to take you through point by point of the entire plot. I'm assuming you know the movie, you like it. Hopefully, like myself, you've been a lifelong fan of the Digimon franchise. You're excited to have it back. But if you haven't seen it, you're not going to enjoy what I'm talking about because I plan to just, ramble way too long, dissecting all the crap I possibly can about this lovely film. I never thought it would happen, folks. Honestly, I think I'm with a lot of this fan base that I thought we had to kiss all these characters goodbye easily a decade ago. And to see them back again, to see a well done, generous interpretation, and essentially a really smart love note back to the series. I went into this pretty optimistic that they could pull this off, and my expectations were mostly exceeded. I was so encouraged by what I saw in the first film. So I think the first thing we have to hit off here is that this film is really smart in that it follows the best of Digimon tradition, which is a series that, despite being kind of a crazy sci-fi fantasy action adventure, despite a group of kids tasked with saving the world and saving the digital world, as crazy as it all is, at its heart, the reason this series has endured and collected the fan base it has is that it really was a strong example of character development. As I pointed out, 8 freaking characters. There's a character there for everyone. And then if you're like me, you almost love the whole team as a collective. You love the dynamic, the way they all work together. The original Digimon Adventure, the first series, well established as the fan favorite, unfortunately kind of the pinnacle of this whole franchise. It's in a lot of ways a very traditional coming of age story, right? All the kids at this point are, I think, about 12, 13, maybe 11, with the exception of TK and Kari, who are the youngest kids. And each of them, through the 54 episode arc, have different personal pasts they have to deal with, different challenges personally they have to deal with in both the real world and the digital world, conflicts with family issues. And the big trick of the Digimon franchise is that the Digimon evolve into larger, more powerful monsters, right? You get Agumon to Greymon, Greymon to Metal Greymon, up to War Greymon. But then they revert back to their old form. They're not like Pokemon who evolve and then are that form permanently. But one of the smartest things that the writers implemented early on was that it wasn't enough for the Digimon to evolve. Their human partner had to have a moment of self-clarity, a moment of self-discovery, the kid, the character, had to evolve as a person, had to grow up, had to change before their monster had the power to become more powerful and help them save the day. A little after school special cheese, absolutely. But again, for something that was supposed to just be, product placement essentially, that's a pretty clever plot device and one that pays off and one that right away Digimon Adventure Tri knows it has to live up to, is that the series never treated its characters as static props for the larger world or the larger action set pieces. So I would say if the first series is, kind of the kids coming of age, growing, a little more mature, in the context of this universe, they've all only aged, I think, about 4 or 5 years. Whereas the fans like me, I think I was 11 watching it, I just turned 28. So there's been a full, good 15-year gap in there. But the kids now, I think, and the heartbeat of Digimon Adventure Tri, which is aware that its fan base has grown up significantly, is that it wants to have that discussion about how scary and painful growing up and entering adulthood really is. This is best exemplified by our character Joe, who, as always, is, mostly concerned about his studies, but now that he's getting ready to go off and apply for universities, he's almost a whole nother person. He's completely detached from the rest of our team, almost painfully, miserably so. And we'll get in more into Joe in part 2 with the second film. But specifically Tai, or even just the state of the group in general. They all still hang out, they're all still acquaintances, but they don't have time to interact with each other the way they used to. And right from the get-go, you see Tai frustrated with that. He's used to being the team leader, and he's used to having, his army of friends around him to support him. And right away, he's got a soccer game. Matt has his concert. Everyone's in different places, and no one can just be there to support him when he needs it or when he's looking for it. Likewise, the main arc of this movie is Tai realizing, that the adventures they had before and the way they interacted with the Digimon before, it was fun and cute, right? Yes, danger, action, adventure, action, spectacle, but it didn't challenge you, and it certainly didn't challenge its protagonists about the larger ramifications of a monster battle in downtown Tokyo. Right? Us kaiju fans, we're used to dealing with this. This film is very much challenging Tai, our main protagonist, with the idea that your monster might do just as much damage as the enemy monster, and is it even moral of you to engage in these conflicts? And, as I was talking about with Tai being aware of the damage and destruction, the series is not just challenging its protagonist, it's challenging its viewership too. This is a very self-aware anime production. It, like I said, it knows its fan base is in a different place than they were as little kids watching. And in some ways, it's kind of harsh the way it asks you to go back to that time when you were a little kid and you saw the Digimon and you wanted to be a Digidestined so bad I wanted a Digimon partner. And now it's asking you as an adult, think about all the consequences of it. Think about how these kids are supposed to be focused on school and now they have to rush off to an airport out of the blue. Think about the damage and devastation to their neighborhood. Think about the victims who get caught in these battles. It really is challenging even its viewership, that as fun as that old anime seemed, there were some darker consequences to all of it that at the time it wasn't worried about, but now that it knows its audience is more mature, it's going to get in your face about. And I appreciate that. I think that is absolutely the right way to go. That doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt my feelings a little bit. So then let's move into the imagery of the movie and how this keeps coming back to these thematics. I think there are a few really interesting visual choices here. Right off the bat, we see the birth of a Digi-Egg, a pretty standard motif for this anime. But, eggs in general, it all, a symbol of fertility, a symbol of birth or rebirth. So it's pretty apt that we're resurrecting this series after 15 some years. And we start with the egg opening, and we have some weird dramatic monologue about, I'm not really sure, I think the birth of the first Digimon, and the weird kind of chaos and corruption of life and life being born. I don't know, but it translates then very quickly to the little egg alarm clock Tai has, which again we're reinforcing that imagery. So another noticeable aesthetic choice that I really like, and I'm still a little puzzled on though, is in most of the promotional art and in several spots through the film, we see this image of the clouds in the sky, and it's always very circular. It's always rounded. It's always like the clouds are spinning around something. And then we see the Digimon portals, the gates into the other world, open up in a similar fashion. It's all very circular, which is a little different. As I remember it, most of the old series usually had kind of this jagged, pixelated thing when the gates would open sporadically. And it could have just been that the artist thought that was cool aesthetically for advertising, for marketing, just for the film in general. That's rarely a good enough answer for the Kaijuologist. So if I have to guess, this focus on this circular cloud pattern that you see a lot in the show and in its advertising, I think it's kind of a nod to sort of maybe a circle of life motif that, these kids had to go through one step of growing up, they're going through the next step of growing up. And the Digimon themselves have a very much a cycle, almost like the Phoenix. They rise up to their most powerful forms, they shrink back to their weakest forms. When they die, they return to an egg and they're reborn. So even in the Digimon's life cycle, we have very much this pattern. Who knows? That's my main theory on where our circular cloud pattern ideas come from. One of the more surprisingly controversial parts of the imagery, I've seen several reviews kind of express frustration with, is how much the kids are in their school uniforms. Digimon has a pretty solid tradition, even from the get-go, that each kid has a very unique outfit. It's very elaborate and flamboyant, unless, you're Joe, who's usually just wearing a sweater vest of some sort. But for the most part, each kid kind of had a flashy, personalized costume to themselves. And now they're all, for the most part, usually seen wearing the same thing. I think this very much ties back to that discussion of kind of the fear and the pain of growing up, which I think is certainly different in the Japanese context too, that there is perhaps more of an expectation that you are going to kind of neutralize yourself. You are going to join the mass. You are going to assimilate and, go with the herd. It's kind of more expected, and there's a tradition there that's a little different than Western civilization expects as you get older. So even though I understand why people are a little disappointed they're not seeing as much variety in the kids' clothing, I think thematically the imagery makes perfect sense on that level. The other part of the imagery I think is really important to bring up is how much this film chooses to dwell on depictions of urban destruction. Now, this is not a new tradition for the Digimon franchise. Even the very first series, by the time you get to the Myotismon arc, which is the point where the anime I think really elevates, you have several Tokyo structures that are damaged, if not outright leveled, at that point in the anime. The second season did it, third season did it. This isn't new. The idea that the Digimon show up and will just trash certain parts of Odaiba or other cities that they're traveling through. But this time you are not asked to kick back and enjoy the high adventure of it. You're asked to really think about the consequences of it. This is most exemplified by Tai, who's almost in like a PTSD-like trance after his first encounter with Kawagamon. But it keeps flashing. Whenever he's about to do anything, we keep seeing these flashes of, the bridge that's been collapsed, of the cars that are destroyed. There's a smashed cell phone. There's the mother reaching for her kid in fear and panic. And the way he keeps flashing through it's almost like a soldier out of a bad war scene who's constantly reliving it and doesn't know how to escape it. Uh, and again, I think that focus on urban destruction is again challenging you to think about, yeah, that old anime seemed really cute, but let's think about the more adult ramifications, right? Okay, now I've been telling you about how much this series relies on character development. So let's get into the characters for a bit here. It really, for the most part, they do a good job of balancing. Almost every character gets a nice introduction at some point. The first moment at Haneda Airport where you see almost the whole gang, you see all the Digimon there. Like, I've watched this movie I think 3 times now, and I still kind of get chills. Like, it's even for me as the viewer, it is like my reunion. It's like seeing my old group of friends I never thought I'd see back again. Uh, but that's how attached you get to these characters, and what good writing it actually was that all these years later I still want to see them so badly. But there's a lot of little tweaks we're making and discussions we're having, right? To keep with this theme of the pain and fear of growing up, I think the first two we have to touch on are clearly Ty and Joe, who, if you notice in the film, are the only ones who, in their bedrooms, we see the little photo of the last day when they were, younger kids, in the last day in the digital world with Jedi, and you kind of see this specter with both of them. Ty almost reminisces, wishes he could get back to that similar time. For Joe, we don't really understand what it means yet, but we come to understand it's almost a fear and a burden that that time as a kid is all he'll ever actually achieve or have, that he won't escape it. Either way, for both of them, that little photo is almost kind of a haunting childhood memory for them, which is interesting in that both of them are the ones who almost seem resistant to having to do their duties as a digidestined. I think the next thing to talk about with the characters, and before I do my reviews or my discussions, I always like to see what other people are talking about online. And this is kind of a controversial point, but one that I think, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, I think it was an unavoidable facet that these writers were going to have to tackle. All these kids now are like 15, 16, 17, and a certain amount of sexual tension and raging hormone attitude had to creep in here at some point somewhere. And most of the frustration I see with people is that they're afraid this is turning into kind of a rom-com that features the Digimon. I'm not that concerned yet, but we do notice it prominently. I mean, the most obvious and kind of surprising one is this new flirtation between Izzy and Mimi. I never would have guessed. It's not that I dislike it, but I never saw that one coming. We see Izzy now very concerned about his fashion and the way he dresses. He's designed a whole computer program to make himself fashionable. Clearly a concern to impress Mimi. But likewise, we also have TK and Kari, who it's always kind of been, they were always the youngest, and they're the siblings of the two leaders, and it was always kind of a cute little what if sort of idea. But now that they're older, it's pretty clearly not a what if. They have almost a Shakespearean, like, dueling rivals thing going between them where, they poke fun at each other. Neither one wants to admit it, but it's charming, it's harmless, I don't mind it. And again, the original series was good about letting these characters grow and adjust. They weren't just frozen in time like Ash Ketchum is. They're allowed to become more mature. And so at some point this was kind of inevitable. Okay, so in regards to characters, I think it's pretty clear these movies are setting up a pattern. Each movie is going to really focus in on two of the main Digidestined characters. And clearly this first movie wants to talk about Matt and Ty, who were always kind of our yin and yang, two leaders of the group. Ty, usually the brash go-to leader, and Matt, a little more withheld, a little more conservative, but also weirdly softer. Like, Matt was just always more complicated. And especially in the Japanese version. The American version really kind of softened up his rougher edges. If you see the original Japanese edit of the first season, Matt can be a surprising jerk at times. He's also kind of harshly misogynistic. Like, one of his favorite go-tos tends to be something about, like, don't be a girl, stop being so womanly. And they definitely kind of smooth that out of the American dub. Um, but you know what? If I'm a writer and I'm tasked with rebooting the Digimon series and keeping the tradition of the original characters, there's no way you're getting around Matt and Tai having to fight. It's kind of what's charming about their friendship. It's what's frustrating about their friendship, but it's who they've always been. Are these two really strong-headed individuals who kind of have different tactics. Now, I'll give the film some credit here. They completely reverse the usual dynamic on you. Tai is now the one who's optimistic or cautious and a little hesitant, and he's not certain that action and jumping into the fray is the right idea, whereas Matt now almost has like a moral obligation. He feels like there is no choice, there's nothing else to do. We owe it to our destiny, to our Digimon partners, to the people of the city, that we have to run into the fray right away, and we can't worry about, a building that gets wrecked by accident. And weirdly enough, Matt kind of does just take the upper hand here. I wish that this movie had concluded their arc a little bit better, but we do get the nice moment where Tai, like I said, he keeps flashbacking the reoccurring memories of the first encounter with Kawagamon, and then he finally, at the point that they're up against Alphamon, he remembers that time where him and Matt, as little kids, had to get blasted by angel Digimon arrows. It's a great little Easter egg callback for the fan base, but it's also the first time in this movie where Tai remembers the strength he got from his team and from his best friend Matt. So in that way, it's nice that Matt is the one who kind of re-anchors Tai and brings him back into the Tai we all used to remember and love from the original series. Now, initially, I didn't really think it was appropriate to bring this up, but I've seen it brought up in so many other people's reviews. I guess I'd feel it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the tension between Matt and Tai is so overwrought. The first time watching it, I thought, oh, these writers really missed it. This was a big misstep, because now it does, and because of all the other kind of flirtatious sexual tension I brought up, it does feel a bit like Matt and Tai are kind of scorned lovers who are mad at each other. And like I said, I work really hard as a proud member of the LGBT community not to read in stuff, homoeroticism, if it's not really there. But clearly everyone else is recognizing and feeling that this is a little much. This is a little dramatic. And I kind of have more a conspiracy theory on this than the actual idea that they really are secretly lovers. My theory, honestly, is that the writers are kind of teasing us. I think they're kind of poking, and not necessarily so much at the American audience, but the Japanese audience of fanboys, fangirls, and the catalogs of fan fiction they've been writing for over a decade now about usually these two characters. And I am also would be remiss not to acknowledge that Matt and Tai do kind of fall into the trope of, gay male norms in like the yaoi genre. Tai's are kind of brash, confident, athletic, and Matt's kind of our moody musician who, is complicated and dark, but also really loves people with all his heart. I think the writers are kind of teasing us. This last time watching it, I tried to be more conscious and figure out what was going on, and there's a couple things that really do leap at you. The first time Matt and Tai see each other, they're in the hallway at school, and Tai sees Matt talking to Sora. Tai looks like kind of shocked and surprised and uncomfortable, and he actually tries to avoid the two. He tries to sneak off, and he gets caught by his teacher. But then it's weird that he sees his two friends And there's Sora, who's always the point of this weird love triangle. Like, is Sora going with Matt or with Tai? And maybe that's what they were trying to get to. But then the next scene, we have Matt and Tai sharing lunch together, and Tai is kind of messing up Matt's ramen noodles, and Matt scolds him about, how specific I am with my ramen noodles. Does Tai know how specific you are about your ramen noodles? The other one that really leapt at me too was when they're Matt and TK are at the concert, and they see Quagmon on the news, and TK calls up his date to inform her this is going to be canceled. I've got to go do stuff. And Matt's like, "Oh, your girlfriend?" And TK's like, "Yeah. Well, you're still my brother." And Matt, and then TK's like, "Who are you calling?" "I'm calling Tai." We were just talking about TK maybe having a girlfriend, and then the next person, like TK doesn't go, "Who's your girlfriend, Matt?" He goes, "Who are you calling?" "Well, I'm calling Tai." I really would be absolutely astonished if these writers would be bold enough to hit us with a gay couple out of the blue like this. And in some ways it's a little cynical. I mean, the friendship between Matt and Tai is one of the more enduring points. That despite the way they fight, despite their rivalry, they always support each other, they always have each other's backs, and usually make each other better. On some level, you just want them to have a good friendship. On another level, these writers are I think they're really poking fun at that whole subculture around this show that's been brewing for a long time and just teasing us, I think mostly making fun of the fanboys and girls. So let's do a quick rundown of the new plot points that we're dealing with here. The first and most confusing is easily the timeline of this universe now. One of the first things we see is something terrible happening to the Digidestined introduced in season 2. What happened? We're not really sure. We see them get knocked out. We see their Digivices go flying. The mood and the color palette, it almost implies they're dead. Which is interesting, because that's not how season 2 ended at all. So we're acknowledging season 2, but right away the movie wants to let you know the continuity of what you think you know about this history is completely off the table. You don't really know. We know something about season 2 had to have happened, because those characters were there at one point, and TK and Kari both have the new D3 Digivice. Clearly something happened here. Did a Digimon go back in time and alter stuff? Or did the writers just decide that, they like to pretend season 2 ended at one point? This time watching, I didn't catch it the first time. There aren't just 3 bodies, there are 4 bodies that we see have fallen, which implies one of those bodies is Ken Ichijoji. We'll get more into that in the second film, but that's an interesting thing I completely missed. Other plot points, now we have this government organization that has been tracking the kids the whole time. Little weird, but honestly a concept and idea the franchise has been trying to tiptoe into for a long time, to varying degrees of success. I don't mind it, especially by the second movie. They start fleshing out those characters better. At first it's a little abrupt and jarring. It's a little confusing. I think it's supposed to be. But what I like, again, is it's kind of a hint of a more mature level of storytelling. It's acknowledging that the validity of the digital world and the validity of the past events where Digimon have attacked. It makes perfect sense that, of course, Japan has a government, a co-op organization thing that's focused on how to handle this. We also know Genai himself is the one who informed this government operation who the Digidestined were and where to find them. So there's probably a lot more to this backstory. I like it, though, because for me, one of the most tantalizing things that Digimon, just I think by nature being a kid's series, there were certain levels of the science fiction aspect that it never quite seemed to want to fully tackle. I'll give season 2 started moving there, season 3 wanted to, but one of the most interesting aspects of the Digimon universe is this idea of, are the Digimon even alive? Right? Where they're made up of a bunch of kind of data pollution almost, files that are deleted, emails that are deleted, stuff that just became kind of this rubber band ball of information that at some point became sentient. At some point developed the ability to feel pain, to think, to speak, to be self-aware. And so really at the core of Digimon, which is different than almost any other weird knockoff monster franchise of the 90s, there is this really hard science fiction backing it all up. We're almost right back to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein here, which a lot of people ascribe that as the birth of science fiction. What did we create when we accidentally created the digital world? And likewise, is it moral to kill Digimon? I mean, you could go back to Isaac Asimov with, the ideas of how to handle artificial intelligence. And now that we have a government organization of adults dealing with the threat of the Digimon, as well as needing Digimon allies, I think it opens the door for a lot more sophisticated discussion that the older series just, I don't think wanted to tackle, honestly. I don't think that was the point of it. Some of the new characters, we don't really get to meet Mei here much. We see her a bit at the end of the fourth episode, or the latter half of the movie, as it were. But we see Meikumon a lot. And Meikumon in this film is largely just a really mysterious force. We know that our big villain at the end, Alphamon, wants Meikumon. Why, we're not sure. Obviously, we can get more into that in the review for the second film. But it's fun. I like the idea that we're introducing a new Digidestin. I like the idea that this universe has to expand a little bit. I think that's appropriate, and as we see, it offers a lot of possibilities for the plot here. Alphamon is pretty baffling, though. It's almost hinted he's the one who maybe ruined or killed the last Digidestin. We see him also, though, get rid of the Kuwagamon army that's popped up at Haneda Airport. And then when he gets in the fight with Omegamon, it's like he makes the decision to leave. You kind of get the sense he could have fought more and that there's something wrong there. And then it's frustrating. There's really no good answers. It's a film that builds up to a pretty epic little battle, and then there's no good answers about anything. Okay, so then to wrap it up, I guess some of my personal feelings here. In general, like I said, I'm really encouraged. I think they're doing a really nice job of respecting the traditions this anime set out and has maintained. The animation, for the most part, there's a few cheap, stills that they just use. There's a few moments you see the budget caught up to them, but in general, the monster battles are really ferocious in a way they weren't before. The new Digivolution animations look really good. They're really fun and powerful and flashy. Boy, I guess if I have to hit up any cons, I feel like the movie throws a lot of mysteries out and can't give you, red herrings to chase. There's just stuff floating in the air, and for the first movie, and considering how much time we have to wait between these films, little too much of the tease factor for my taste. And then the big Alphamon battle is so rushed. I mean, it just comes out of nowhere, and you really wish you had more time to see, like, Metal Greymon and Where Garurumon. We haven't seen them in a decade, folks. Let me watch them fight a little bit before they digivolve, or before they DNA digivolve into Omegamon. Like, I've been waiting to see that. Though, one thing to be said for that last episode, that whole idea with, we finally give Ty back his goggles, and now he uses the goggles to see the rifts in the digital world into the real world. That's so fucking brilliant. I mean, it's so nice. The goggles are like the iconic Digimon look, and now they actually serve a functional purpose. They're not just a silly, like, anime fashion aesthetic. That's the kind of smart writing that you do see hints and promises of throughout this whole first movie, and hopefully we just get to see them expand further with it and dive more into these characters. Whew, I think that's enough talking for my first anime review. I hope y'all enjoyed. Next time we'll be hitting up the second movie, Determination, I think. I forget what it was called. we'll find out. It's fun. Thank you for letting me have this experiment. I'm sorry, Kaiju fans, this wasn't a traditional review. And then to Digimon fans who just found my channel, thank you for watching. We hope to see you back as I continue to cover Digimon Tri. And someday I would really like to go back to and parse more into that first Digimon Adventure series. Because like I said, it's a template of good storytelling, and there's just so much that you want to talk about with all those characters. But we're trying to stay focused. That's not my strength as a film reviewer, is focus. I like to talk a lot. Anyway, thank you for watching. Check out the other videos on the channel. Until next time, I am the Kaijuologist. I'm signing off from Denver, Colorado. We are the Mile High City. We're getting higher all the time. Ooh. That is some nice anime hair.